How ancient rituals created sacred homelands. Land ownership disputes and displacement affect millions across Africa and its diaspora today. But understanding the profound spiritual relationship between African communities and their ancestral territories requires looking far back into history. Professor Kimani Nehusi at Temple University examines how African communities developed what he calls the Afrikan Ancestral Land Complex, a distinctive collection of values, deep memory, knowledge, attributes, and rituals centered on land. His research focuses on ancient Kemet, known today as Egypt, where some of the earliest written records provide evidence of these practices dating back over 5,000 years. Nehusi used historical and linguistic analysis to examine sacred and secular texts from ancient Kemet alongside modern scholarship on African traditions. This approach allowed him to trace connections between ancient practices and contemporary African communities worldwide, from the Sahel region and other parts of Africa to the Caribbean. The research reveals that African communities created ancestral land, also known as family land and generation land in some parts of the Caribbean, through specific ritual practices involving three key elements: placentas, navel strings or umbilical cords, and the bodies of deceased ancestors. When these were ritually buried in the earth, they transformed ordinary land into sacred territory with deep spiritual significance. In traditional African understanding, land became inalienable, meaning it was owned collectively by the community rather than by individuals. Ancient Egyptian texts show that the navel string and placenta were considered magically potent objects with transformative powers. The navel string was so important it appeared in their fundamental myths and was cut using special obsidian knives in ritual ceremonies, even when more advanced metal tools were available. These practices created profound psychological and spiritual connections to land. Ancient Egyptians consistently oriented themselves toward the south, toward Inner Africa, which they called by names such as Land of the Placenta and Land of the Ancestors. Nehusi's analysis shows that this wasn't merely geographical orientation based on the Nile River's source, as some scholars have suggested. Instead, it reflected deep cultural knowledge of their origins in the heart of Africa, which they considered their spiritual homeland, what they called God's land or Holy Land. Remarkably, elements of this ancient complex persist today across the African world. In Guyana and the Caribbean, people still declare "my navel string is buried there" to express unshakable spiritual attachment to ancestral land. This research challenges common assumptions about African relationships with land, revealing them as sophisticated spiritual and cultural systems rather than simple economic arrangements. Nehusi argues that understanding this ancestral land complex is crucial for comprehending African identity and the deep connections between people, place, and the heritage that continue to shape communities today.